Good evening and welcome to this August 5th Planning Commission meeting. We're going to start off this evening with an informational presentation on a proposed TIF district. Brent, if you'd like to come forward.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Brent O'Neill. I'm with the city's Economic Development Division. And unfortunately, I don't get here as often as some others, but whenever tax increment financing is the topic, we're going to be over here. And as you know, over the past couple years, as we've gone through TIF districts and TIF processes, it's been our desire to communicate or even over-communicate with the Planning Commission on TIF-related matters. And with that, we did kind of develop an informal process to come before the Planning Commission twice, or at least have some opportunity to present information on potential districts so that you had the opportunity to have some advance notice or some time to formulate questions or even dive deeper into the details on any district before you were asked to vote on it. Again, so with that, we've made that commitment to try to communicate with you twice on all projects. We've tried a couple different formats in doing that, and I think Jeff yesterday at the Planning Commission briefing did a really nice job of kind of summarizing our goal and our intent and why we're now moving to the format we're in tonight, where we are basically the first item on the agenda, not really an item, but just to give you again that sneak peek into projects that might be coming up. So in that spirit, we are here tonight to talk to you about a potential project that we would like you to consider in September. It's a project that it actually came up to us pretty recently in July. It's an industrial project. It's a local project in Sioux Falls that we're doing an expansion. And they're in the process of working through their application. Their application actually has not been submitted yet. And for that reason, I'm going to withhold a few of the project specifics. We do expect that application to come in the next 2 to 3 days, certainly before the deadline on Monday. It is kind of a fast-moving project. There's some important timing issues on the decisions that company has to make. So as it stands now, again, wanted to, in the spirit of communicating as well as we can, at least get to you today with that much information. And then by Monday, when we get that application, we would forward that certainly to you and the Planning Commission. So you'll still have about 20 or so lead days before the September hearing. And then at September, we would ask you to consider it. So I would answer any questions. That's kind of the update we have for now.
All right, thanks, Brent. Any questions? All right, I don't think we have any at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Denise, if you'd like to read items 1 through 9, please.
Madam Chair, I'm going to excuse myself for the consent agenda items.
All right, thank you.
Item 1 is approval of the July 1st, 2015 minutes of the regular meeting. Item 2, July plats. Item 3, 3010-2015, rezone from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District for allowed forms located south of West 85th Street and east of South Meredith Avenue. Item 4, 3029-2015, rezone from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban District for allowed forms located south of West 85th Street and east of South Tallgrass Avenue. Item 5, 3072-2015, rezoned from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban Districts to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban, RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, and RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density Districts for allowed uses located at 5201 South Sycamore Avenue. Item 6, 3104-2015, rezone from the C3 Commercial Community District to the O Office District for allowed forms located at 3520 South Gateway Lane. Item 7, 3106-2015, rezone from the I-1 Light Industrial District to the RA3 Apartment Residential High Density District for allowed forms located at 3801 West Technology Circle. Item 8, 3107-2015, rezone from the AG Agriculture District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban, RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban, and O Office Districts for allowed forms located at the northwest corner of West 22nd Street and South T. Ellis Road. Item 9, 3118-2015, preliminary subdivision plan for Legacy Ridge Addition located at the northwest corner of West 22nd Street and South T. Ellis Road.
All right, thank you, Denise. I believe we have a request to move item 7 to the regular agenda, correct? So is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and discuss items 1 through 6 or 8 and 9? All right, is there anyone on the commission that would like to comment on those items? All right, seeing none, first of all, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Next, we have a request to move item 7 to the regular agenda. I will look for a motion.
I will amend the motion to approve moving item 7 to the regular agenda.
And second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we will vote on the amendment. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes? Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Now we will vote on the main items as amended. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motions pass. If you are here for items 1 through 6 or 8 and 9, you are free to go at this time and enjoy your evening. Thanks for coming. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. I need a motion to approve the regular agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will start with item number 7.
Item 7, 3106-2015, rezone from the I-1 Light Industrial District to the RA3 Apartment Residential High Density District for allowed forms located at 3801 West Technology Circle.
Good evening, Jeffrey Schmidt, representing planning staff on items before you at Planning Commission this evening. This item number 7 is in the south central southwest part of town. As you can see on the zoning map in front of you, it's currently zoned I-1. It's coming out of a planned development district from the old zoning ordinance, and I-1 allows the most land uses in the city of Sioux Falls, including institutional, office, as well as retail businesses. It is a 1.4 acre site. It's currently vacant. It's been vacant since this site was developed, this area was developed. Directly to the east is the City of Sioux Falls, the Sioux Area Metro's transfer station, and then Louise Avenue. The request is to rezone this I-1 site, this 1 acre site, to RA3, this 1 acre site. RA3 would be allowing for residential apartments in this location. The proposal is for, I believe, just under 40 units or around 40 units of apartment zoning. 39 units with associated parking and the ability to use the transfer station for busing also at the end of this site. Staff comments were that there were no comments from water, police, sewer, fire, or zoning. Drainage comments are standard, that the site would have to take care of its own drainage on site. And so you can see there's a best management practice drainage facility there. And the land use analysis for this site is, if the rezoning is approved, the applicant can construct apartment buildings of unlimited size. If the rezoning is denied, the parcel can be developed for office, retail, or light industrial uses. This does comply with the City of Sioux Falls' comprehensive plan, and staff recommends the rezoning.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, is the petitioner here?
Good evening, Erica Beck, Lloyd Companies. We have been looking at this site actually for quite some time just because we feel really strongly about the marketability of it for multifamily residential. It's taken us a while to get it under contract. We actually just got it under contract on July 23rd, so even after the petition date for rezoning. But we feel really good about the proximity of it to the bus transfer station, employment centers, shopping, dining, entertainment, and therefore it being marketable to both market rate units as well as affordable housing if that's something that we can pursue on the site. As Jeff indicated, we do show on the site plan that we actually just got done yesterday, pedestrian access to the bus transfer station. We haven't had a conversation with the city about that yet, but we do feel very strongly that if given the opportunity to build these units on the site, we would certainly want to try to provide some sort of pedestrian access directly to the bus transfer station and encourage the residents that are living there to utilize that facility. Our current concept, as Jeff said, shows the construction of 39 housing units on the site with associated parking. We feel pretty good about that right now. I don't think that we could probably accommodate any additional units other than that, given the amount or the size of the land and the need to have adequate parking there as well. The box that's shown just to the south of that apartment building is labeled PG, that's playground, because we do feel like we'll have 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom units here that can accommodate families if necessary, so we'll have a playground on the site as well. We haven't had necessarily comments in regards to the need for a BMP, but we have indicated one as far as a location on the site, just in case that is a comment that we received back from engineering. I actually just wanted to point out, I had a conversation with Mary Michaels from the City Health Department. She's actually responsible for the city's Live Well campaign, Live Well initiative. And she talked a lot about, well, she actually brought in a speaker, I think it was about a year ago now, Mark Fenton, who talked about creating walkable places and the necessity of doing that and trying to encourage, the incorporation of true neighborhoods into the community and making sure that within those neighborhoods we provide for a variety of uses. And when I was describing this project to her, she had sent me a lot of information following that conversation supporting that effort. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, because I know that when we had a neighborhood meeting on this project, I think it was a week and a half ago now, one of the comments was, well, I'm not entirely certain if I can support this project just from the standpoint that it could detract from the value of the land surrounding it. And one of the slides that Mary had sent me, and I have that here tonight if it can be put up on the screen, I'm not certain, but it basically states that, or it indicates that places with higher walkability perform better commercially and have higher housing values. And then it gives some examples of communities in which that was actually rated. So we don't ever necessarily incorporate that into our evaluation of a site as far as the existing or surrounding valuations. But I felt like that was important to note just because of that comment that we received at the neighborhood meeting. The other comment that we received at the neighborhood meeting was with regard to the creation of additional traffic on West Technology Circle. And just the fact that, the addition of housing units there would create additional traffic. And so there was some concern about that and whether or not the city, we were asked whether or not the city would allow us access to the site from the bus transfer station. And at that meeting, I had indicated that we had not made that request, but I did supply that or make that request to Jason. I don't anticipate that the city will allow us to do that, but for the sake of trying to get a response to that, we did ask that question. One of my comments at the neighborhood meeting in response to that comment about additional traffic was that with the existing zoning that's on the site today and it allowing everything from retail uses to office uses, we probably wouldn't be creating any additional traffic. I guess from my perspective, then those uses would. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, I'll go sit down.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Quick question, Erica. Excuse me. That last part about connecting to the bus transfer station,
Yes.
You were referring to vehicle traffic in that comment, not foot traffic or either?
One of the comments that we had received at the neighborhood meeting was that it would be great if the city allowed us to connect via vehicle to the bus transfer station as an additional access point for this site. We want to connect, and it's shown actually on the site plan, with pedestrian access to try to encourage our residents to use the Southwest Bus Transfer Station.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Heath Koyman. Our business is located at 4500 South Technology Drive, which would be directly to the west of the proposed site, 2 parcels. I assume that you guys all received our letter.
Could you maybe just step forward a little more and talk into the
I
microphone?
assume you guys all received the letter that we wrote with our displeasure towards this and the rest of our neighbors, because I haven't found a single neighbor that was for this yet. So if you guys have any questions about that letter, I can comment about that further if you like.
Madam Chair. Excuse me, I don't know that I got the letter. If I did, I didn't read it. I apologize. Specifically, what are your basic objections?
Wasn't the intended use for the property. We strongly feel that our property values will be diminished because of it. When my business partners were at the original meeting that Lloyd Companies held, they were unsure as to what exactly they were going to do. The comment was made that, you know, it'll be very nice, affordable, $1,000 a month rent, something of that nature, and that the city was pleased because of the close proximity to the bus station. In my opinion, that people that have the financial ability to afford $1,000 a month rent probably don't necessarily use a lot of public transportation. Although I do agree with her comment, everybody should be encouraged to use it. Those are based off of that comment and not having a layout, which I understand based on the timing that they had, not being able to get it done by then. I can completely respect that. But the other comment that was made is that they're considering affordable housing. And I don't believe that that's going to increase our property values in any way, regardless of what the tenant is there, whether it's the most beautiful rental apartment available in town or anything to the converse.
So it's your feeling that property values is your largest concern, traffic, secondary concern?
Correct. You'll see if you had the letter, and I neglected to bring it along with me this evening, I'm sorry, but if you had the letter amongst the others that were written today, you'll see the major amount of the concerns. Traffic, yeah, is a concern. You know, we don't have any major traffic problems in that area right now. 53rd and Louise is not the safest intersection, really, especially when it's icy and you're traveling east on 53rd. It's slightly dangerous.
Madam Chair, can I just, one more follow-up. Assuming that this proposal fails, it goes back to light industrial. You don't have any concerns that perhaps a light industrial type of complex could be built there that would be far greater in traffic and probably less appealing than an apartment house? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Not until it was brought up earlier by Erica. But if that's the intended use for the original zoning, then when we purchased our lot in 92, 91 or something like that, we knew that. In 91 or 92, when we purchased this lot, there was never an intention for there to be apartments there. It was never zoned that way. The developer didn't have those intentions either. The developer was so very cautious of what they did that the covenants ran 20 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
In the event it passes, do I get notified or should I just stay around? So if it does pass and to be rezoned, we're going to appeal.
City council.
Yeah, it goes
City council first.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address this item? All right, seeing none, I'll look for commission action.
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff before we do that.
All right.
Jeff, it was a planned unit development before, right?
That's correct.
You know what, if this was before Shape Places, it was the PUD was, were apartments considered as part of that PUD? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes. Okay. It was the Technopolis planned unit development. It included everything between 49th and 57th Street from the interstate over to Louise Avenue. Okay. So if you can envision that area from the interstate to Louise Avenue, from 49th Street down to 57th Street,
Yep.
it has everything in it.
Yep.
Okay, he is absolutely correct. This sub area, probably this parcel, did not include apartments. But the entire land area, you have Valhalla, there's apartments on the south, on the west, on the north, there's apartments throughout here, including Hematech, which is the industrial development, the post office, warehouse distribution. So this is a real mixed use. This is everything that we've always asked for in planning, where people can live and work and shop, and there's retail in here, and there's condominiums in here. And so then when we came to rezone it, we didn't want to prohibit the property owners and say, guess what, we're only going to give you office. And then they'd come back and say the exact same thing they said tonight. Wait a minute, you can't give us office. We had rights. So we gave them everything, which includes they can basically do what they want out here. The property owner has the right to develop it along a busy corridor.
Madam Chair, one follow-up question. What is included in I-1? What could be there?
In I-1, it's going to be light industrial, warehouse and distribution. It's almost easier to say what you can't have in there, because in I-2, industrial 2, it's heavy, where you would have batch plants and meat processing. And so in the I-1, it's everything that's light. You're going to have warehouse, distribution, storage buildings, manufacturing, but not heavy manufacturing. So if you can keep it inside with some outside storage, you can do that. As soon as it starts to have more noise and it has fumes from a creamery, distilleries, you can't do those heavy uses here. But everything else light industrial you could have here, which is what they kind of have down to the south and the west.
Okay. Yep. Sorry, Madam Chair, one additional one. One thing I think I saw in the letter was the talk of spot zoning.
Yeah.
Can you maybe define that for us?
Yes, we can. They brought up a really good point. And Planning Commission's familiar with this, but to bring it out to the public. Spot zoning is something that you've heard 30 or 40 years ago and maybe even 10 years ago. We completely addressed that back in 2003 with the new zoning ordinance. Spot zoning is illegal. You can't do spot zoning. And then we go on to clarify that spot zoning is not allowed in this area, but what is allowed is that you can go into an area and allow people to have the same zoning rights as any other property owner. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. But what you can't do is give someone a right and not give someone else the right to do that. That is spot zoning and is illegal. So if someone would come in here and say, I want to do it, and you'd say no, and the next person comes in and we'd say yes, well, then you've spot zoned their property.
Right.
But we're not doing that. We're saying everybody publicly has the right to do this. If they want to come in and own the property and do something with it, it's completely legal. And then we basically say we're not discriminating. You have a right to change that zone.
So spot zoning is not zoning a spot.
Correct.
It's more about trying to declare who can or who can't.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. I will look for commission action.
I'd like to make a motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
A little bit of a first here, at least in my experience with this commission, that a residential property is getting scrutinized by office and industrial tenants. Usually it's the other way around. I don't want to presume what the surrounding property owners were thinking here, but while this is unusual or maybe not, maybe the original intent for this side of this Technopolis metro or officeplex. This isn't the first I've seen. I've seen on the west side near Holy Cross Church where there's an office zoned plot next to townhomes and residential single family and a rather sizable utility infrastructure in that area. So this doesn't, from what Jeff just clarified, spot zoning or is this unprecedented? I don't see that in either case.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair? I would also say that this is a rezone, so we're looking at, does it make sense to have high-density apartments next to office and industrial? And I think that's allowed almost everywhere we go, that wouldn't be an issue.
All right, thanks, Nick.
I also find it interesting that this particular piece of land, obviously there's the bus transfer right next to it, but right across the street is a whole series of apartments that have a, maybe a little bit smaller character, but a similar kind of scale to them. And so there does make some sense from an overall planning standpoint to have like facilities near each other where it makes sense. And so it seems to be compliant in that kind of a consideration as well.
All right, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will move on to item number 10.
3105, 2015 rezone from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density District for allowed forms located north of West 85th Street and west of proposed South Beale Avenue.
Jason's not watching this at home, but he must have done this on purpose because this is the same issue in a different part of town. Okay, so they're rezoning single family to apartments with apartments across the street. You can see in this zoning exhibit, it's currently zoned RS yellow, and there's brown apartments directly across the street on 85th Street. So what they're proposing to do is to take a vacant piece of property that's adjacent to an elementary school and a park along a major arterial street, and they want to rezone part of that single family, not the entire parcel of single family, but a part of it, and make it apartments and still have apartments across the street. One of the interesting things about this also, similar to the previous one, is you can see coming from the north to the south, you got Brett Avenue on the north, and you have Beale Avenue on the north, and you have Brett Avenue on the south. This is their 53rd Street. This is the busy road that comes through and will generate and take all the traffic from these units out into 85th Street. What we call that in the planning and engineering world, that's the collector street. So it's going to collect all the traffic out, just like 53rd Street, out onto the arterial roadway. So you can see here, that's the roadway on the plat, and what they're proposing to do. This is an 11-acre site. The apartments will be on the west. The single family will stay on the east and stay as the transition. The accessibility is along the collector street, proximity to the school and the parks to the north. They would also have to have buffer yards, as we state in our shaped places, the required buffer yards. They'd have to meet all the zoning ordinances for height, parking, setbacks, lighting, all those types of issues. Fire, police, sewer, and water were okay. Drainage, they'd have to have a BMP. Traffic, they talked about that Beale Avenue would need to be constructed by the property owner with this project. And in conclusion, if the application is approved, the RA1 zoning district would allow a maximum of 2 stories and 24 units per building, and the applicant could construct his proposed 2-story, 6, 8, 12, and 16 unit buildings. If the applicant is denied, the applicant can construct single-family homes on the 11 acres. However, the lots would front onto a major collector street, and some of the lots would have frontage on a future arterial streets. Staff recommends approval, and it complies with the comprehensive plan.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, is the petitioner here? State your name and address, please.
Mike Runge, 7408 West Songbird Circle. We have this property under contract with the intent of converting that RS or RA to apartments. We had a neighborhood meeting. One of the primary concerns from the neighbors was drainage. I assured them that the engineering would allow for and improve drainage along 85th Street, and also let them know that there would be a sump pump collection system along the back lot line, which they would be allowed to hook into. I understand some of the homes get inundated with the natural drainage as it stands today, and that's typical of undeveloped property. It's got some sloughs and some areas that don't drain, so that's likely causing some of the infiltration of water into their basements. We feel that the development of the property will ultimately improve that situation, if not cure it altogether. Other concerns was whether or not their apartments would be adjacent to their homes. We assured them, and the plan shows that the residential would be next to the residential, and the transition would be, on the stuff that would be developed.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, Dan King, 7500 South Afton Avenue. I'm just 2 houses away from here. I live across the street from the school, and I think the main concern is things are already being developed to the northwest of there, and I think it'd put a lot of pressure on 82nd Street and Beale, regardless of an arterial, to 85th, and a lot of pressure on the school. A lot more people in the area. I think if we could look to keeping single-family homes in that small tract, it'd be more in line with the existing neighborhood. And it is a very quiet, light traffic neighborhood. It would change the character of the neighborhood quite a bit if we had that many apartment units in there.
All right, thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address this? Come forward. Excuse me.
Hello, Ben Markman, 7509 South Afton Avenue. I'm on the west side of Afton there, backs up to the proposed change. One question was, the annexation, going farther to the west there. When you annex that in, I'm sure it's going to be single family again. The transition from single family to apartment back to single family, just as a zoning. I noticed throughout Sioux Falls it goes single family. Usually we go to RD1, orange, townhouses or small condos that way. Just my concern that way as it flows through. Also the added traffic and the added school population, or kids coming to school there, can explore, handle that. I'm sure they can, but I know they're at a capacity now. So you had another 160 units there. I think it was 16 or whatever it was. So I don't remember the exact number. So also, yeah, the drainage there, and the reeded area, the water that's sitting there. I don't know if it needs to be reclamation or what ordinance it would be there to reclaim that. It's a natural area, so I don't know if the builder's taken any thought into that. So if they can move it, reclaim it somewhere else. So just to be on that page. So that's about all I have. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we had someone else that would like to address this.
Hi there. Troy Hoekness, 7621 South Afton Avenue.
Kind of spinning off a couple of the concerns that my neighbors had. I guess three main issues I just wanted to address was the potential water issues. I'm on the other side of the block on the south end, so luckily I'm about 5 or 6 feet higher than everybody else on the north side of the block. And everybody on that north side has had numerous water issues the last 10 years I've lived there. And I just feel that, you know, per the neighborhood meeting the other night, when Mr. Runge was, you know, explaining that there's going to be no fill or limited fill brought in there as far as excavation work, it's hard to believe that those people aren't going to have major water issues for years to come, because we've already seen it on our side of the development on Afton Avenue. So again, you know, just curious, you know, how that's going to look as far as a landscape to address the drainage concerns, as well as the second issue would be traffic flow. Ben alluded to that a little bit. We're going from the current zoning, RS1 had 65 units that was approved many years ago, and we're going to 136 units plus another 16 single family. So if you add those two together, we're looking almost 160 total units per se compared to 65, which was the original zoning. So again, almost 2.5 times more people when you look at it going through that school district. So a concern, I got 2 twins at home, 5 years old, going to school next year, and so I'd hate for them to be in a situation where they got 2.5 times more cars going by that school every day. The third, I guess, area I wanted to address is just the home value appreciation. When you look at, that's a question maybe for the zoning commission. Do you see a lot of depreciation of homes, or maybe a flat line of home appreciation that are right across from apartment buildings? I'm not an expert in that matter, but that would be a question. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward? All right, seeing none, I would look for commission action.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Madam Chair, Jeff, could you come up one more time?
Yes, sir.
The parcel of ground to the west of this, is that, okay, it is still ag. And if I can get my directions right, to the west, to the east, is that RD2? Is that twin homes, townhouses?
The zoning map's in front of you, so it's single family to the east, RS, and to the west it's ag. So.
To the north, I think, is what he's talking about.
Huh?
To the north is RD2, is that?
To the north it's RD2, yes, sir. Yep.
Fourplexes, or do you know?
Right now it's a mix. Yep. And then his question that the applicant or the citizen brought up is the white spot on this map with the zoning map is the area that we're currently going through the annexation process with. If you go a little bit further to the west, that's tall grass. So at 85th and tall grass, that's the area that is being developed with the future interchange in mind. Okay, so I brought this up because if you look to the south of 85th Street, that's what's going to be developed in that area. It's going to be commercial, red. You just don't see it. It falls off the page. It's going to be commercial, office, and apartments. If you go to the south, that's what's going to go to the north. That's what's happening with it's a major commercial corner in this area.
Thank you, Jeff, for clearing that up for me.
Madam Chair, don't go away. Can you shed some light on the concerns about drainage and water? I'm sure that engineers have done their studies.
Sure.
And maybe that could clarify a little bit for us here on the commission about that concern.
Yeah, drainage is interesting always, and it's one of those standard 3 that come up before planning commission every time: traffic, drainage, and land values. And we have experts come in to talk to planning commission on those 3 generally every season. So with drainage, this developer will have to address the drainage for their site, and they cannot release any more drainage off their site than is already on their site. So it will not get any worse. Probably will improve, because once they build it, they'll slope it, they'll drain it, they'll have storm drainage in on Beale Avenue, they'll have a storm system in, so generally it will get better. It won't get worse. So that's how they do it. And then we have engineering analysis that goes out there and says you have to not make it any worse. You can't have any flow going off this site to the adjacent areas.
That work's already been done.
Not yet, because they have to rezone it first. Once they rezone it, then they come in with their engineering plans and go, this is how we're going to engineer it. And they go, well, how are you going to grade it? Where's your sewer project? And then what Mr. Runge said is that he's going to put a storm drainage system in the backyards, and those property owners can tap into the, so then all those things start to be addressed, but not until they rezone it.
One step follows the other.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I have, Jeff, maybe I need to get Mr. Runge up here. I heard him mention a sump collector system.
Yes, I can do that. Yes.
What is a sump collector system?
Sure. In the backyards of new housing developments, all new housing subdivisions, they have to put a sump pump collection system in their backyard easement. Along that back property line, they put in drainage tile underground, and then the homes have the ability to tap in their sump pump collector, their system, right into that sump pump. Okay, so right now what you do when you drive around most of the places in Sioux Falls, you see the black hoses running through and they're sticking them in their neighbors' yards. Okay, what they do on the new systems is these are forced in, and then they run underground and they go right into the sump pump collection system. That sump pump collection system in the backyard goes right into the storm sewer system. And Mike's going to put it in, they're going to construct it, it's in the backyards. When the people come in and buy the lots, their sump pumps has the hookup, and it goes right in their backyard, and they don't have to worry about the black hoses, and it's an engineering study.
So these guys have agreed to hook up into that?
Mike's building it to his, and he's going to put it along that back property line.
So it's something that he's going to do, because I know a lot of houses, you don't have to hook up to it right away, so that's why I'm asking.
You don't have to hook up to it from your house to the system, but on the east side of his single-family houses, he's putting it in. So on the west side of all the people in Afton, the system's going to be there. They could hook up to it.
Okay.
But right now they're going, well, what would we hook up to? We're going to drain if they have drainage problems, where are they going to drain to? Well, they're going to have a system then once he builds it.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that fact.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Madam Chair, one other question for you, Jeff, because I think a lot of times we hear the property value argument, and I think it's very easy to say, it's difficult to prove, and it probably doesn't hold a whole lot of water.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. We have the Minnehaha County Assessor come in and talk to us also. And again, it's very interesting to hear. You're welcome to go down and talk to Lincoln County or Minnehaha County about this, but they have yet to see a rezoning change the adjacent property values. Okay, generally commercial value or apartment values are higher. Okay, it's just common sense actually. If you have a single family home at $250,000 and you build an apartment complex at $1 million, the value's up. Mm-hmm. It's just, if you build a gas station at $10 million, the value's up, and so the values in the area go up. They don't go down.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Any other discussion?
One other thing to think, I mean, this is a land use issue. Again, this is kind of what our commission all boils down to is it okay to have low density apartments by single family, by other higher density apartments, by office? I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Madam Chair, what I do like about this plan is the developer's taken on the risk with the single family to the east. And a lot of times we'll look at these where they're coming right up against existing single families that create a lot of heartburn for a lot of people. But I like his approach on this. In other words, he's going to take the risk. If somebody wants to buy a single family lot there, they know what's going to be across the street, not find out what's going to be across the street 5 years down the road. But
And as you say, Kenny, that helps to buffer those existing single family from a different use. So again, that's fairly good planning to do it that way.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Item 11, 2928, 2015, conditional use permit in the RE3 form to allow on-sale alcohol beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at 4713 East 26th Street.
This is a 1-acre lot on the east side of town. It's an existing retail establishment and has already an existing off-sale establishment in there. When they're coming in right now to add an additional off-sale alcohol establishment, or on-sale, excuse me, alcohol establishment, they're required with the new zoning ordinance, since they're within 500 feet of single family, that they have to have a conditional use. So that's with the new ordinance, the separation distance. The proposal, as you can see, there's existing on either side, and in the middle there would like to, existing tenants on either side, but in the middle of this, they'd like to add this tenant finish and build this out to have the on-sale as well as video lottery in this facility. The review has been done. They have to have a security management, and they have to go through city council for their licensing. The conditional uses and the standards have to be met, that they have enough parking spaces, that lighting needs to be addressed, soundproofing needs to be looked at, as well as the security management has to be approved by the planning department. We believe that they will be able to provide the clarity for the location, nature, and extent of all these things, and they could get a conditional use permit.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for staff? All right, is the applicant here? Please come forward.
Good evening. Jim Schneider here on behalf of Brian Soberg. My address is 2412 South Grinnell Avenue. We currently own the existing malt beverage license in this location, and we are looking to grow our business. This space just recently became available, so we have started the process. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? All right, I guess not.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? All right, seeing none, I'd look for commission action, please.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Currently one there already, and we're going to add another one.
All right. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Item 12, 3084, 2015, conditional use permit in the RE2 form to allow on-sale alcohol beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at 1721 South Minnesota Avenue.
I won't go in the same amount of details as the previous one. This is located at the 26th in Minnesota. It's on the southwest corner. You can see it's already zoned commercial. There is single family within 500 feet, which is what the circle represents. Here's the aerial where you can see it's already an existing, there's a casino on sale, and they're just expanding to another adjacent tenant finish to add another video lottery establishment. The conditions need to be met at this location also for those 4 standards.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, will the applicant please come forward? Hello.
Jim Schneider again. I'm going to be a broken record on this. Exact same situation as the previous. We own the existing malt beverage, again looking to grow into the space that just recently became available to us. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? All right, seeing none, I'll look for commission action. Oh, I'm sorry. Come forward, please.
Sorry.
Your name and address, please.
Ron Dake, 1701 South Spring Avenue. We have three, I represent the neighborhood of 200 homes from 22nd to 28th from Spring to Summit. And we had our neighborhood night out last night, and I talked to all the neighbors that attended the neighborhood about this subject, and they had a few concerns. Number one is the new Mark Twain, Susan B. Anthony, we prefer calling it Mark Twain, has tripled in size, and our concern is bringing alcohol into that neighborhood, more alcohol. We already have one casino right next door to where this one's planned. The other concerns we have is traffic. In our neighborhood, we also have some of the commercial establishments of Nelson & Nelson and Rich Lauer's Capital Management that they have parking problems already with the casino and the tax that is their Liberty tax, I believe, of their customers coming and parking in their lots, cutting through, even though when Nelson & Nelson put it in, we managed to have the city require them to put a curb up on Minnesota Avenue. There's people that still jump the curb because they get impatient at the light on Minnesota and drive through the parking lot, caught it many times on security cameras, even running over cones that were put up and underneath their vehicles. And that area is one of the 26th in Minnesota and 26th in Spring is one of probably the most dangerous intersections in this town. Talked to the police last night. They confirmed that it was a very high accident rate area. The reason 26th in Spring is because people try to cut off the Minnesota traffic light and go down Spring and then try to merge onto 26th Street, and you can sit there and watch accidents nightly. Our other concern is violence that might be brought in by more alcohol. We've had experienced some inebriated people in the neighborhood, and it's only going to increase with an alcohol permit of more people in the area. Them are our three concerns: is the school and the traffic that's going to, by tripling the size of that school, is going to bring more traffic to the 26th and Minnesota area. And then the parking, we do not have parking on our side of the street. The overflow parking for them establishments end up on the other side of the street, taking up the residential area's parking, and also on 25th Street. And I guess that pretty much sums up. We hope you consider these items when you vote on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward and address this item? All right, seeing none, I will look for commission action, please.
Motion to approve for discussion.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Could staff come up and kind of address the parking requirement issue as this is expanded? What is the extra parking requirement related to that?
I'd have to pull it up on the zoning ordinance, but it's probably 1 to 300. It's already a retail establishment right now, so they have appropriate parking. I can assume what he's alluding to is that they're not using up the parking lot, they're parking off-site. That's probably more typical. I mean, I'm assuming, but people are going to come here and they're not going to park in this parking lot. They're going to park adjacent. It might be an issue, but they're not using up the parking. What we have found historically, and I think this is common sense, these are not big traffic generators. They don't generate a lot of traffic. They don't generate a lot of use, but they have people that come and use video lottery. So we did not receive any complaints or issues from the police department on the previous one or on this one.
Thank you.
Jeff, what's current business in there? What was the current business in there?
Tuxedo rental.
Okay.
Because he had the gowns, and then it was the small little shell. It was the tuxedos forever. Yep. Long, narrow building. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign.
Yes.
Okay. We have one opposed. Kenny? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Item 13, 3096 2015 conditional use permit in the RE3 form to allow on-sale alcohol beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive use located at the northeast corner of West 85th Street and South Louise Avenue.
Your Planning Commission Chair and I talked about this. This is very rare that we had 3 of these items in the same agenda. I mean, we haven't had this in years. Okay, here's another off-sale beverage establishment within 500 feet. You can see it's already zoned commercial. You can see the circle. It's within 500 feet of single-family homes. Okay, this one is a current vacant site. They're proposing to build a retail establishment, and one of their first tenants would be a on-sale establishment with video lottery. So they need to go through the same process and meet the same 4 conditions. This is not an expansion. This would be new. Here's their proposal for how they'd like to lay this site out. It's not a conditional use for this site. You're not approving parking lots or landscaping. They have to meet all the standards of the zoning ordinance. You're just looking at the conditions on an on-sale establishment within 500 feet of single family. We received no comments from the police, fire, water, sewer, drainage. Everybody's fine. They have to meet standards.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, one question. If it wasn't a casino, they would still have the same requirements, right? It was just a bar? On-sale establishment, right?
On sale.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? Hi. Please state your name and address.
Charlotte Miller, 3437 West 84th Place. Also with me is Kathy Borns from 3438 West 84th Place. We are members of a 26 twin home association just west of Louise. We have concerns about the construction of an on-sale liquor establishment at this location. We have concerns about traffic, first of all. Do I understand that the entrance to the complex will be on Rambler Place?
Can you show us the site plan again? Can you, or we don't have that?
The applicant may be able to address that, but we want to be approving a conditional use site plan because that's not, the site plan they're showing does have Rambler, but that's not what you're approving. So whether they show this or not, they still have to go through engineering to get their access approved. I can't approve or deny that plan. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So.
My concern is that Rambler Place is the entrance to the Rosecrest townhomes, and there are numbers of children there, and they meet the bus at the corner of Rambler and Louise. Typically maybe 10 to 12 kids. I can't speak for that because I live across the street and no longer have children. That would be a concern for me. And also, as far as traffic is concerned, at that location on Louise, with us living on West 84th Place, west of Louise, we need to come in we need to make a right turn out of our West 84th Place, go down to 85th, make a U-turn, and then, as I say, come back into town. The traffic situation we feel will be very much compromised if there are as many as 6 businesses also flowing out on Rambler Place, which I yet not have determined as to whether it's a city street or whether it's private property. And those would be issues that would have to be addressed. I'm just concerned about a casino also. And I know that this is probably not the correct forum to ask the questions, but I did a little research and kind of got lost in the zoning laws online. What are the hours of operation allowed for casinos in Sioux Falls?
And actually, ma'am, we're addressing a conditional use permit for this item, and so I don't know if it's appropriate to have the applicant come back up and answer your question, but if you're willing, would you please come forward and address that item?
The question was hours of operation?
Yes.
Typically, casinos are allowed to be open 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. We haven't discussed at this site whether that's going to be the case or not, and I guess at this point, that's not what we're here for. We're here for the conditional use, so.
I agree. Thank you for coming up and clarifying that, though. I appreciate it.
May not be appropriate, but it certainly is a concern about the type of signage, whether electronic signage is allowed, and so on. These are just issues that are quality of life issues for us because we are within 500 feet of the proposed property. So.
Let me try to help you and the neighbors.
Okay.
Okay. Always trying to go backwards here. To try to address any of the stakeholders that are home now watching this, the northeast corner, the northwest corner, the southwest corner, and the southeast corner are all zoned commercial. They're all going to be zoned commercial. They're all going to have unlimited hours, whether it's an on-sale establishment, a Ace Hardware is going in the southwest corner, whether it's a grocery store. So the hours will be unlimited. The signage will be unlimited. They'll be able to have, which will be later on in the agenda, there's a possibility for, probably not this far down, but there'll be digital not billboards, off-premise signs, but there'll be digital signs. If it's a gas station on either one of these corners, they'll have electronic message boards. They'll have, if you get probably on that northwest corner or the southeast corner, a gas station's going to go on one of these corners. A car wash. The traffic on 84th Place and Rambler Place. Places are always public or private streets. Places are private, so those are the responsibility of the adjacent property owners. So they'll access onto those, and there's a median there right on Louise Avenue. So Rambler won't come across, so you won't have any problems with Rambler, but you will have a lot of opportunities to go on to 84th Place when that intersection develops. So when that gets developed commercially, that will be your challenge, because that will be the grocery store or the gas station or the McDonald's or, yeah. So it's not going to be the northeast corner. You're going to be the northwest corner.
May I just say one more thing?
Yep.
Okay. When my husband and I moved to 84th Place 11 years ago, the northeast corner of that intersection that is now being considered for a strip of 6 commercial properties was a nice ranch home. And I know that people have said, be careful where you move if there is empty property because you don't know what is going to be there. Well, when we moved there, it was a ranch home, and it subsequently, then I think the people died, the house was moved out of town, and it was zoned commercial, and that was probably my opportunity that I missed to be in front of a unit like this to say, you know, we didn't plan on this. So again, we are not planning, or we were not planning to have the possibility of a casino within 500 feet. And we would just hope that if you were in the same situation, that I would wish that every one of you would now consider that in your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward?
Hello, my name is Jeff Gould. I live on 47347 85th Street. And the issue really is about how close to residential do we allow facilities that serve alcohol. It's 500 feet. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 residential areas that are within 500 feet of an area that will serve alcohol. Well, that's the standard. And it looks like that standard is being violated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. If it was 400 feet, we wouldn't have an issue. But I didn't make the rules, somebody else did. And the rules are 500 feet. I imagine there's enough places that we can meet the standard of residential buffering and still have enough places to go and have an adult beverage. I can also imagine that for reasons that the planning and zoning has come up with, 500 feet is the standard. So why not meet the standard? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Fuller, and I work at 7521 South Louise, which is basically 84th and Louise, and we own the building there. I've been there since 2006, and my office window faces Louise Avenue, and I probably look out the window more than I should during the day. But across the street from me are those apartments that you can see just north of the property that we're talking about. And there's a lot of kids that live in those apartments. And I think the young woman that spoke earlier mentioned that the bus, I think it's in the Harrisburg School District, stops right at basically 84th and Louise on the other side, on the east side, right adjacent to this property that wants to put in the on-sale liquor establishment and casino. I don't think that's a good fit. I don't think it's a good fit for that neighborhood. I don't think it's a good fit for those kids. And I know this isn't necessarily a direct consideration, but just my next door neighbor is Keystone, the outreach center. And I don't think it's really a good fit with Keystone and what those people are trying to do in the neighborhood. So I have concerns. I have safety concerns with those kids. I have, I guess, just general moral concerns with those kids. And I just don't think, there's a lot of other places in town to put casinos and on-sale liquor establishments. And we see a lot of them throughout the city. But I don't think this is the right place. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience would have any new information to comment on? All right, seeing none, I'd look for commission action.
Madam Chair, before we do that, Jeff, can I ask a couple questions? So help me, the way I understand a conditional use permit is the use is allowed with conditions, right?
That's correct. It's an allowed use, and it's allowed with conditions because it's within 500 feet. If it was within 400 feet, we'd never even be talking about it.
Yeah, they would just be able to bill it and be fine. But
Correct.
since it's within 500 feet.
We have to look at the 4 conditions.
And yeah, the 4 conditions we have, do you want to go over those just one more
Yep,
time?
the 4 conditions you can look at You don't get to approve or deny it. You get to look at the 4 conditions: the parking spaces, the lighting, the soundproofing, and a security management plan.
So this is, it's an allowed use closer than 500 feet with those, as long as those conditions are met.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I got another question. Jeff, how far is Craven from houses?
Craven is at 73rd Street on the up north for everybody. It's on the west side of the street, and it's probably within 100 to 150 feet. They're directly to the south. The single-family houses, the twin homes, are directly to the south, 100 feet.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, just for clarification, Craven's does allow off sale and has a casino?
Yep. Yep.
Craven's is a restaurant bar. Yes, so they have on sale at the establishment.
They do have machines there too.
And they have video learning.
So it's similar.
Yeah. No. Again, as I kind of mentioned, at all these other corners, in these commercial corners, they typically have those types of uses.
All right, any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll move for approval.
Second.
All right. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Item 14, 3110-2015, Initial Development Plan Amendment for an S2 Institutional Campus Plan Unit Development located at 4309 West Creekside Circle.
This is an amendment to the initial development plan. We require amendments to the initial development plan to be transparent and come back through Planning Commission so that the applicant has a chance to show you. This is highly recommended by staff to be approved at this point because it seems to make a lot of sense. Good Samaritan is going through with their master plan and making a lot of improvements out in this area. Part of their improvements is and the applicants here, they can explain this in much greater detail than I am, but they're building a memory care facility here. And with this zoning requirement, we require extensive parking. However, it's a memory care facility and these people do not drive. So they're coming in and they're amending their initial development plan to put the appropriate parking in. They're reducing the amount of parking. So staff said that's why we do amendments to the initial development plan, is when it makes sense, just come and tell us and we'll support it, and then they can come in front of the public and explain it. They don't need that much parking. So staff recommends this approval.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for staff? All right, would the petitioner please come forward?
Ed Lund, Co-Hazard Architects, on behalf of Greg Gamble for Good Samaritan. Jeff did a superb job of outlining the project. I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right.
Thank you.
There's none. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? All right, seeing none, I'll look for commission action.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Commend them for building this kind of a facility. It's unfortunate. We need more of them, but it's great that they're doing it.
I think this is exactly why we do this process. At times, it makes sense to adjust the standard a little bit because it's just appropriate to do that based upon the condition and the use, and so this is a good choice.
All right, all in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 15, a resolution designating the project boundary for Tax Increment Finance District 2015A Pavilion Square. And item 16, a resolution adopting the project plan for Tax Increment Finance District 2015A Pavilion Square.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself.
Good evening again, Brent O'Neill with the Economic Development Division. Here to talk about a project we first had on your agenda in June, the June meeting. We've had some time to look at this project in a little bit more detail and are here today with our recommendation to approve a tax increment financing for Washington Square. I'm going to leave this picture up for a second just to kind of show you the concept. Again, I think it's certainly received publicity and you've seen it yourselves in previous packets, but again, kind of wanted to get that picture up there of the vision and so forth that the developers have for this project. Before I go into it, I did want to say that the development team is represented tonight by Chris Hallman, and so at the end of our presentation, Chris or myself or other members of their team would be able to answer any of your questions. We gave you a fairly lengthy document. I think it's about 30 pages. It's the project plan, and that's really the meat and potatoes of any TIF district. What we're going to do tonight is try to pull out the pieces of that 30 pages that we really feel are key and relevant to the decision that we're going to ask you to make at the end. The last thing before I dive in is I wanted to say that items 15 and 16 are related, and so our presentation here will apply to both items, and then actually the last slide that we have, we kind of articulate the expectations or the sort of the content of each of those two agenda items and what they achieve. So diving right in, I'm going to start here again trying to orient you a little bit to the site under consideration. It is in downtown. It's on Main Avenue and 12th Street. It's that area on the, if you look at the left image, it's right across from the Washington Pavilion. And then if you move to the picture on the right, it's just a zoomed in portion. We're looking at a single parcel. It's currently a surface parking lot and it is owned by the developers. Tidbit of information on there, towards the top you see the current taxes are approximately $8,000. It's a property that's worth a little over $300,000 today, and we'll get into more detail later on why that is relevant. This is just another snapshot of that project. On the left you see kind of a cross-section, a profile of what this will be. It'll have a mix of uses. I'll start on the bottom. You're going to have parking that is built underground. It works its way around the back side of the project and then even integrated into the main structure itself. On the main floor, you'll have retail accompanied by office. You'll have another level of office above that parking garage, parking structure, and then the developers are proposing roughly 18 condominium units to go on top of this. In total, there'll be nearly 200 parking spaces. About 125 of those will be above ground, and those will be made available for lease during the day to the public. And I'll talk again about this later. And then at nights and weekends would be free to the public to support activities in that area, the downtown economy as a whole. The rough budget for this entire project is $30 million. There is a TIF request, a gap that we are looking at. And one of the things I'll talk about in a little bit more detail as well is what we consider TIF eligible expenses, those expenses that generally are supportable for TIF, for public incentive, those that really meet the test of being extraordinary or serving the public interest. And then the TIF consideration, the amount that both the developer and the city feel is reasonable for this project to proceed, for it to go forward, is up to $2.9 million. As we kind of move into the considerations phase, there's just some high-level things as far as planning, kind of your standard planning items for consideration. First start on zoning. It's currently properly zoned for what they're proposing to do, so no zoning change will be required. We have two plans, of course, that are very relevant, especially downtown. The comprehensive plan of the city, Shape Sioux Falls, in conformance with that plan. And then more recently, our adopted 2025 downtown plan. And this project meets several of the goals in there as well and is in compliance. When we look at evaluation, and we've had kind of a pretty picture showing buckets before, but really three of those buckets are those first three bullet points there. It's a review of the project financials, really looking at the gap, the projected gap, and whether or not TIF is a necessity for a project to go forward. The second item is the primary uses of TIF funding, and I alluded to that a little bit earlier, and I'll have a chart in a second here. But really, the meat and potatoes of those expenses are the parking structure component and some of those extraordinary development costs associated with this site. And then the third is, certainly thinking of the public interest, the impact, and so forth, we do want projects that we support TIF for and that ultimately make it through the process to approval to have an impact, to have a significant impact on the community in the area it's being located. So we will dive deeper in those. As we move on, the developers did do and commission a market study that was included in the project plan that was submitted to you, and certainly there are quite a few impacts and a range of impacts, and certainly those are going to be quite high when they come to fruition. We, as part of our recommendation, we're trying to quantify, so to speak, the value of the parking. Certainly as they charge and collect revenue during the day, you know, that's a consideration, but also the consideration of, you know, what does adding 150 or 200 parking spots do to our overall parking supply and relieving maybe pressures of demand in downtown. And then additionally, the value of providing that parking free to the public, particularly nights and weekends when you do have events at the pavilion, you do have crowds downtown, other events, and supporting, again, even projects we haven't thought of yet that just might benefit from kind of moving that parking supply in place. Then the last thing is, it's always important as we look at these to really get a refinement of the project numbers. In this case, we initially had a pretty good look at the architecture's projections and some contractor estimates. More recently, in those 2 months that we had to really talk with the developer and refine and so forth, they brought in Tegra, a consulting firm. The city itself has actually used before on big projects. They're based out of Minneapolis. But Tegra was a group that we have a high level of confidence in. They're very competent, and we're able to really look at our numbers, not only necessarily confirm them, but probably refine them a little bit. So we do have a little variation in numbers, and I think that proved to be a very good thing in giving both the city and the developers a better understanding of not only the TIF portion of this, but the entire project itself. So I referred to TIF eligible expenses. This is really more or less a carbon copy from your project plan. There's up to roughly $6 million that we feel are eligible. As I alluded to earlier, we are really supporting that amount just under, well, 2.9 million. And I'd ask you to maybe focus on the first 5 items there, because that's really where we feel the case for using TIF is the strongest. So those first 4 are items that are really in the soil, getting that site, what we call development ready, making it sort of neutral and on par with other developed sites. So that will involve a lot of groundwork, will involve shoring up the site, and it will involve doing some specific engineering to that site. And then the 5th one refers to the parking structure, and there are actually some items below that a little bit that are tied into the parking structure as well. But we feel a portion, right around a third, when I refer to quantifying the value, is really where that public benefit lands. So when we get those things together, again, that supports not only the developer's gap of $2.9 million, but also what we feel is a good use of TIF dollars. This slide, I'm going to just tell you right away, I had some trouble editing this, so there are a couple pieces of information that should be on here that are not. And so I'm going to start by saying that the original base value of this project is what the county equalization office assesses it at today. It's in excess of $300,000. We are projecting that when this project is done, it's online and fully assessed, it'll be roughly $18 million. So that's 17.5 or more in increment. Right now they're, and again that's a typo there, $8,000 in base value, should say $8,000 in current base taxes. So we're looking at forecasting out a little over $400,000, 410 or so would be the property taxes generated when this project is stabilized, and we, for illustration purposes, actually went out 12 years from now, so 2027 shows that stabilized level. Again, $400,000, that would be used over the course of the next 10 to 12 years to pay down that $2.9 million TIF that hopefully makes it through the approval process. And then this chart takes it a step further and just shows the breakdown of the impact of that to the taxing entities. So it's, when I say impact, it kind of means 2 things. One is what's the short-term sort of impact to those entities. Here is really the revenues that rather than make it to those taxing entities are going to be diverted to the TIF fund to pay those obligations. But more importantly, when the project is done, those are new revenues that this property does not currently have. So those are new revenues that can be generated to the site that would go back to the county, school, and city. There's two things or two ways when you're looking at TIF that really make it eligible. What about the site or what conditions exist that really necessitate the look at TIF in the first place. And those two are economic development and blight. And we believe there's a case to be made for both of those in this case. One only is what's required to go forward. So the economic development, it's a pretty straightforward deal. I mean, you're enhancing and expanding the economic development opportunity and value and spin-off development and multipliers and so forth from this project. We believe that this project has that in spades. The second thing with blight, and blight can always be a bit of a debatable term, what blight truly means, and there's some statutory definitions that we have to follow, but this is a site that really has been underutilized. In particular, over the past several years, it's even been a situation where the developers have done a lot of work on this block to clean it up in its entirety. But we feel it is still underutilized. It does have site constraints that really inhibit its maximum potential. For those reasons, we do feel that it meets the economic development and blight standards. This is a chart provided by the developer, just kind of illustrating again how they plan to operate those 125 spaces above ground. The lighter color parking is when it will be available to the public, but at a paid rate. And then the nights and weekends you see there are when it would be made available to the public at no cost. I'll maybe pause just for a second and then move on. So we're near the end of my presentation, and like I said, we're trying to find that balance of giving you the right information without going through all 30 pages of that document. So we're certainly anticipating questions. We're both here to answer those. As we wrap up here, I'm going to kind of walk you through this slide. Of course, you saw our staff report. Staff does support and recommend the project as presented as it is written in the plan. So we're talking about two actions that we're asking the Planning Commission, or two items, I should say. And each of those, we're asking you to make two motions. On item 15, it's looking at the boundary. So what you see there is 15A. Is you're really designating the boundary. You're saying that this is a suitable boundary. And then item B is where you're basically forwarding this to the council with your recommendation. And in both cases, we ask the Planning Commission for approval. When it's time for item 16, we're going to ask the same things on the project plan. We're going to ask you to adopt the plan. And then, again, item B there is recommending approval or forwarding approval to the City Council. So we recommend approval on both of those. And then what's a little different at the City Council, just to give you a little sneak peek there, there's a third action that the council will take. So they will basically take what you've done with item 15 and 16 and vote on that. And then there'll be another item when the City Council hears it, and then that is actually entering into an agreement. So that is putting the city and the developer in a formal agreement that really becomes binding, articulates expectations, obligations, and criteria that each party will meet. And so that is really the point where we talk about the 2.9 million, the conditions that we'll have, the conditions that the developer will have. I'm going to put this question slide up while we answer questions, and then I'll put that last slide back up when we're ready to vote.
Right,
thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Any questions for staff?
Sure.
I do, Brent. Two questions. On page 110 of our packet, which I believe is page 13 of the project plan, there's a projected tax revenue table. The total, I think, might be one of those infamous typos you mentioned. It seems to be missing a digit. I was wondering if you had that full total for that. It's table 4 for that projected tax revenue through 2035.
Okay. I'm on the table. Could you point out the number again?
It starts with it's the total at the bottom. It starts with a 7, but it seems to be missing a digit.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And I actually, believe it or not, I know what that number was. It was 580, so 7580, 554.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that error.
Page 110. And then on page, Commissioners, it's 121 of our packet, page 24 of the project plan. I just wanted to clarify the TIF district we're looking to propose is represented here by that section 35 only.
Yes, the area highlighted in green.
Yeah, it's different shades of gray on our packet here, so I just...
Oh, sure. Well, and why don't I'll go back here.
I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't the entire block.
No, it is the 35, yes.
35 designated section. Those are the questions I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
How come when this first came out, what's the reason why it was the TIF that they're asking for dropped? Is there a reason for that, or?
Well, it was probably a combination of things, and the most important thing is whenever we, as a city, look at TIF, we are trying to do the most thorough analysis we can, first off. And second of all, we really follow what is commonly referred to as the but-for test, which is we would or could support TIF up to that amount where a project can only go forward but for TIF. You're really trying to find that silver bullet, so to speak. I mean, we certainly don't want to be, as a government entity, supporting TIF if it's not necessary. So we're always trying to find that standpoint. We had the opportunity, and I say that sincerely because I think over the last 2 months as the two teams worked together, we both kind of learned a lot about we learned a lot about the project. I think they learned a lot about our process. And as we dove down and again learned a lot about the project, even refined numbers, got a better understanding of the TIF costs, got a better understanding of the total project cost, ultimately what we came up with was the project here that the developers want to move forward with, as well as a TIF amount that we felt was one, both necessary for the project to occur, and two, supportable by not only the eligibility of those TIF-related expenses, but also kind of past precedent or even quantifying the value of parking that's free and so forth. So that's, and if others want to speak to that, I'd like to listen to, but that's kind of the two big ones. Okay.
Brent, I know you guys have been working awfully hard on this. Help me clear in my mind, this building is going to have 18 condo units that are going to go back up for resale.
Yeah.
Are these 18 units part of the TIF?
No, we've really viewed it as two separate projects. Well, to say it's two separate projects is probably not accurate, but to really focus the TIF on the non-condo portion of it. That the condo has to be self-supported on its own.
So in other words, someone goes in, buys a condo, like everybody else, they'll get an assessment after new construction, and they will pay regular taxes just like we would.
Oh yeah, the owners of those condos will pay regular taxes, you bet.
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair, curiosity, I'm pretty much in favor of this project, but I used to be a mathematician and numbers drive me nuts sometimes. When this was first proposed to us in June, the total cost was projected at $29.5 million, and it was at 8, was possibly 9 stories. Now it's 7 stories, and the total cost is $30 million. One would think, at least in my brain, that if you lose a story, you would probably have less cost. Sure. Can you help explain that for me?
Sure. The biggest change here, and I probably don't have a good way of putting up the image from the last one, but under the original proposal, one of those stories was always optional. It was basically an office story was optional. So the image maybe showed 9. In reality, it was only 8 that any of the budgeting or any of the numbers reflected. In the new project, there was a modification to the parking, so we went from about 260 to 200 or so. And that is really the piece that lowered the building from 8 stories to 7, and is also where some of our modification come from. And I'll give a short answer, and if I'm right, great. And if I need to be corrected, I'll ask Chris to make that correction for me. But I really, one would say that, we're doing our best estimate on any of these TIFs until it's actually bid and so forth on what the project will cost in its entirety. And most importantly, and again, I alluded to how this last 2 months has been very good in terms of both teams understanding the project better. And I think we found some things in their project, or they found some things in their project that maybe were a little bit low in their original estimate. So we've got a lot better understanding now.
Thank you. And as you said, it was an estimate. Nothing's set in stone until the bids are let.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for staff?
Madam Chair, Brent, one question is how the way a TIF works is this would be the incremental value that would have been taxed but gets returned to the developer to cover some of these costs, right?
Right.
So they're eligible for $6 million. We're talking round numbers, talking $3 million going to them. So since that's about half, is it that just half the tax revenue for a year would go to them and the other half goes to the, or it just shortens that time frame?
It shortens the time frame. Okay.
Thank you.
By about 3 years.
Excuse me?
By about 3 years, it looked like.
Yeah. No, it'll cut it down.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Brent. Is the applicant here? If you please come forward.
Good evening. Chris Howman with H4J1. We aren't developers. We started out as a bunch of guys that went to Washington Senior High, and I have 3 other brothers. We all went to Washington in the 80s. Another partner of ours, he went to Washington Senior High in the 60s. And the site, the whole block from Winterstein, Chevrolet, Jay Sean, we started purchasing those properties. The Chevrolet building is one that we acquired. Video Mania building is another one that we acquired. And our goal, our intent has always been to, preserve, Washington Pavilion and do something to enhance the pavilion. Because we went to school there, we're very strong supporters of our downtown, of our community, and we felt we could do something better. So we started buying properties, evicting maybe some of the people that we felt weren't complementing the pavilion. And we really didn't have a plan other than to improve that area of downtown. And so through this long process, we started doing that in the 90s. And started with the Video Mania building. We evicted that tenant. We went through the facade easement program, which is a fantastic program. And so we decided to preserve the Video Mania, that structure, and the Chevrolet building. And through the course of that preservation, there are also some buildings that are in the identified site here, 3 of which we tore down. There was a lot of vagrancy. There was a lot of blight that we just decided to raise them, and then at the right time we would look at a development. And we've had opportunities through the years to develop it, but a lot of it was very, 2-story office building made out of wood. We wanted to do something that, again, complemented the pavilion. And so we're very excited about this project, very excited about the type of materials that we're going to be using on this project. This project is going to use a lot of steel. There's going to be a lot of stone. One of our partners in this project is LG Everest. They have a quarry in Jasper, Minnesota that quarries building materials with Quartzsite. The University of South Dakota Business School has that on their building, which is beautiful. Many of the old buildings in Sioux Falls have Quartzsite. Sharapa has Quartzsite. So we wanted to do something that again, complemented the pavilion and something we could be proud of, our community could be proud of, and we feel that this project will do that. Our blueprint to kind of how we got to this stage was the 2025 plan, 2035 plan, and looking at mixed use, I think we feel that there's a need, a desire for more people. You see more people moving downtown, but also having an office component, having a retail component. We're pretty excited about it. So,
thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
As you know, we combined item number 15 and 16. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address either one of these items, please come forward. All right, seeing none, I would look for commission action on item number 15.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to designate the boundary of tax increment finance district 2015A Pavilion Square.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will say that TIF boundaries, I think, should be just the property that's, being developed, and I appreciate that that's the case here.
All right, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. 15A passes. I'll look for a motion for 15B.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to recommend approval of the tax increment finance district for the Pavilion Square designated boundaries.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item 15B passes as well. Now we'll move on to item 16. Again, I'll look for commission action.
Madam Chair, to repeat myself, I make a motion to adopt the project plan for tax increment district for the Pavilion Square.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. 16A passes. We'll move on to 16B. I'll look for commission action.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to recommend approval of the project plan for tax increment finance district, Pavilion Square.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item 16B passes as well.
Item 17, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the off-premise sign section of the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls.
Thank you. With item number 17, this is the result of a study group that was just recently completed. The study group was appointed by the mayor and was led by City Council Rick Kiley. The group met 5 times and offered a time for public comments and input at each time. The first meeting, the group reviewed the 2013 Shaped Places zoning ordinance for off-premise signs and map locations. Other municipal ordinances were also reviewed. The group focused the study on locations where billboards would be appropriate both in context of forms and existing transportation corridors. The study group was concerned with future expansion of billboards. The study group's final draft is seen before you. It provides for 10 billboard off-premise sign opportunity overlay districts. The opportunity district is to preserve and protect sensitive land uses and promote the safety of the traveling public. In general, this is where the locations of the off-premise signs or billboards could be located, along with other standards that are currently or proposed to be added to the zoning ordinance. And any changes to this opportunity district, as you see before you, would still have to go back before this body and City Council for any future expansion, similar to what we do for a zoning approval in the future. So it received consensus and support from the study group, and it's being recommended for approval at Planning Commission Following that, it would go for City Council's approval.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff?
Madam Chair, I have a couple. Jeff, so help me understand, these are the only places that billboards or off-premise signs can go?
That's correct, within this opportunity corridor, if this ordinance gets passed by City Council.
And so that would include a billboard or an off-premise sign. So if, say, I was Walmart at 85th in Minnesota and I own the property back from the road, but I want to put my sign out on the road, that would be not permitted?
Correct. It would be an off-premise sign. You'd not be able to place it off your premise.
Okay. Other question, I mean, we talk about to preserve the landscape quality. Aren't all we doing is consolidating or concentrating signs in these areas and not allowing them in other areas?
That'd be a summary, yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Jeff
Or the applicant.
or the applicant?
I guess I'm the applicant too. Staff applicant. Thank you. I can be called up.
All right, I'll look for commission action. Any comments from the audience? Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come up and comment on this item?
My name is Jeff Gould. I live on 85th Street. And I am nowhere near any of these existing signs. And I believe the question you asked to Nick was that would there ever be any more signs in Sioux Falls? Well, I think there would be if Sioux Falls got bigger, wouldn't it?
No, I don't.
Are we saying there will only be billboards at those places ever? Or are we saying that as the city expands, we're looking at this as a blueprint for future expansion?
I think that may be a question for Jeff. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I'll have to bring staff back up.
I can ask Jeff to come back up.
Say Sean might have an answer to that too.
Yeah, Sean,
Well, I
do you have any
can.
comments?
We talked about this being kind of the establishment of the existing corridors,
right.
The opportunity districts, as we call them. The intent is that as the future of Sioux Falls changes and expands and there's additional opportunities that seem appropriate because we have the right type of zoning in those areas, other things, that there may be a future opportunity district that may be requested. I think the Billboard Committee felt it was really important that we follow some extra rules and extra steps to make sure that we have public comment and feedback before any of those expansions happen. And so I think we were pretty careful to define specific opportunity districts to make sure that we didn't have really the situation that happened at Sycamore and 41st happen where it just showed up in the middle of nowhere and everybody was surprised. The intent here is to kind of get it to be fairly predictable and something that gets community feedback before any expansion of those opportunity districts is approved.
That makes sense to me. That was my understanding. That we're looking towards the city of Sioux Falls not in the next 10 years, but 20 and 30 years. One of the things that I found very interesting was that a gentleman from Lamar Sign spoke and said that when a sign is in. It's property rights, and they protect that to generations. His statement that I thought was interesting was that you and my grandchildren will be dead, and the billboard regulations will hold for that property. So I listened to that with open ears and thinking that the decisions that we make here today will be effective for the long, distant future. And the ones I'm most concerned with is the distance from residential areas, and I think 500 feet is on the table as an option. That seems a little close, but that, at least to me, would seem the minimum, because one of the other things that I found out, and maybe I've been misspoken to, is that once a billboard is in place, you're not really allowed to regulate what kind of billboard, whether it be lit or a Daktronics type billboard. Well, a sign that's 40 feet above the ground, which would be roughly the height of this building here, can be seen for quite a distance. That's its purpose, its design. If it's lit 24 hours a day, and now if that image can change every 6 seconds, that is a whole nother kettle of fish altogether. And I think to protect future people who don't even own homes yet, who maybe aren't even born yet, those houses that will be settled in Sioux Falls in the year 2050, I think should be protected from a flashing image 500 feet from their homes. And that's my concern. Currently, this doesn't affect me. I doubt that it will affect me in my lifetime. I have no dog in this fight except the concern for future citizens of the town. Thank you.
I've got a question for you, Jeff. Yes. If you're okay. I mean, so I understand that you live away from this, and so it would protect your house in theory right now. There's a lot of people that live along those corridors that it doesn't protect, right?
Okay, so ask the question again. I'm not sure I understood it.
If you're concerned about protecting people that own homes and we think billboards should not be anywhere near them, then shouldn't we not
500 feet was the word I heard. I thought 500 feet is the distance.
But it's 500 feet from these current corridors. You would have to expand the corridor or something like that in any future area to develop one.
That would be true, yeah. I don't know if anybody is here who currently has a home within those corridors. I don't know if they're aware of it. No. A lot of people aren't paying attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address this item? Come on up. You could state your name and address, please.
I was just waiting till, can you be moved a little bit farther up so it goes to the right and you can see where it's taken from? Can it go a little farther? Okay, yes. My name is Bonita Schwan, and I live at 7601 South Audie Avenue, which is actually at the corner of Audie Avenue and 85th Street. And I'm providing you this picture of a visual that was taken from the front of my house there, and that's 500 feet. And I'm providing you this picture. It's just not about my house, what is 500 feet and a billboard someday from someone else's house. And that's my front porch. That's my bedroom on the side there. And when Jeff alluded to the digital signs that we're going to, and the reality of what 500 feet is not a great distance from someone's home. So I provide you that picture, and we're very appreciative of all the time that the Billboard Study worked on this and took our comments. And after they passed the 500-foot premise from single-family homes, that's when we went out to my house and walked off what that would be. So I'd just like you to consider, before you place your vote this evening, that that's just not my house. That would be the view from any single-family home that potentially could have a billboard the size as Jeff referenced. Actually, Jeff's house has a porch in front, and that is the view that anybody in Sioux Falls could have, looking out into a billboard from the front of their house or the back of their house, the side of the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address this item? Hi.
I'm Marty Jacobson with Lamar Outdoor Advertising. I guess, before making an approval on this, I think the committee did a great job. Everything looks pretty much in line with what we agreed to. There are a couple clarity items that we'd just like to bring to your attention, I guess, just for consideration. If I look at the the ordinance, the amending code ordinances of the city that I printed off from the website. I go to page 5, and I never did get a clear, I guess this was kind of written on and things like that, but I just want to do a clarity on page 5. If everybody has that one, there's a writing on there. It says, leave it in, not included in amendment. And I guess I would like a clarity to say if that was the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items there, or what was that pertaining to?
You're referring to the changes in the ordinance on page number 5, is that what I'm understanding?
Yep, I'm looking at the draft.
Okay.
And on page 5 of the draft, I'm looking at, there was some writing on here that looked like, I believe I was told Shauna included in there. It says, leave it in, not included in amendment, and then it has an arrow there. So I'm asking for, I guess, clarity on that before you vote for approval, that we would like to have clarity on the variance section of this draft.
I don't see that on my, does anyone, am I missing it? Or I don't see that at all, so I'm not sure what you're referring to, I apologize.
Okay.
What he's referring to is this is a draft, and he has a copy of a draft, and I don't know.
Okay, so it's just a draft that was addressed, but that isn't the final document. So it's just a draft.
It's not the final document, but I guess we would like to make it public and get it recorded that it's a concern of clarity that I don't know what that leave it in, not included in the amendment is concerning there. Is it including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of that whole paragraph, or is it just including what's crossed off there? So I guess clarity before an approval would be, I guess, a good thing.
Yeah, I guess since it is just a draft, that's what it is, just that,
Yeah.
a draft,
Okay.
and I can't really address it any
I
further
just want
than
to
that.
bring
I'm
it to
not-
everybody's attention, because that's one thing I think that just needs to be clarified before the final draft, just so I guess the people participating in the whole process understands. The other item I'd just like to bring, I guess, and kind of bring to an attention in the recommendation and in the draft, I guess, just in my understanding, I don't know if everybody that was going to the sessions that the committee held understands that not one thing in the recommendations are even, I guess, what I want to say is it doesn't matter for any of the 10 opportunity districts. There's not one, I guess, change in that. So the opportunity districts, everything going forward is pertaining to new opportunity districts, not the ones that are current. So I just didn't know if everybody quite understood that either. I know it was a question that we had, but there wasn't one change in the way the opportunity district sits now to any of those as far as spacing, as far as just everything that was included with some of their recommendations. So I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention as well. There wasn't any changes to the original opportunity district.
And actually, that's not quite true. There were some changes, like the 10 feet from any part of the sign that was included with both the existing opportunity districts as well as future opportunity districts. There are some requirements that change through these recommendations.
Okay. And I guess
Basing
they were
criteria
more with like being around churches and things like that, or were some of just the verbiage on it that were included, but nothing as far as spacing. I think it's still 600 feet. And then residents didn't change, and I know the new districts are going to ask for 500 feet. None of the districts here made any changes to that. So if I was to go in and build a new board, I wouldn't necessarily have to be within, I mean, the distance wouldn't have to be further than 500 feet, from my understanding. Can you clarify that? And I guess,
I guess I don't know what you're saying, to clarify it.
Well, I mean, I was just, would like to make it record so you'd consider some of these things before the final approval. Because there was really, and I guess, I think, you know, as far as the residency, the 500, the spacing's been a huge thing. One one of the things that I think, as far as Lamar would recommend is maybe more spacing between the signs. The radius of 1,000 feet would eliminate exploding of signs as well. So that was the one thing that maybe would be considered as far as the final recommendation. And then the last thing is with our industry is there's 3 sign sizes, and some of these opportunity districts have opportunities on interstates. So the ordinance says 288 square feet is the largest size, and 288 feet on a street that's basically just commercial street is just fine and is adequate. But if you get traffic going 55 to 65, 75 miles an hour on the interstate traffic or 4-lane, we have 3 standard sizes. And I guess for advertisers, if somebody was in Chicago was going to come here and they want to ship their vinyl over for us to use, it's a benefit to them to have standard sizes as far as on interstate and things like that. So I'd ask to maybe recommend as far as interstate traffic, we use a standard size of 14 by 48 billboard. It's 672 square foot. To consider on interstate traffic to use that appropriate size as far as the standard. And then as far as 4-lane highway traffic, 10-6-36, which is 388 square feet, to be used in those situations where traffic is actually going 55 miles per hour on those highways too. So something to consider. I appreciate, the work the committee did on it, and I, take those into consideration. I appreciate your time tonight. Any questions?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, so I want to kind of clarify something you said and make sure I heard that correctly. So what you're saying is the 500-foot setback is not part of these opportunity districts as they're shown on the screen. That's only for any new opportunity district.
That's what I'm aware of.
And that's, I think, the way I read the ordinance too. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
So we would protect, if protection of homes is what we're talking about, anybody that's not on one of those major roads, we're saying you're not protected. Anybody that's off of those, you are.
Well, there is protections for those as well. I think the committee discussed quite a bit about the validity of looking at potentially having a much longer offset, 500-foot offset to existing. There are some issues with that. We would end up with non-compliant signs pretty much everywhere in town, which creates other issues, for staff and for planning commissions, et cetera. So what we tried to do was come up with an approach that allowed many of the signs that are currently in place to remain as a kind of a grandfathered condition, and then looking at new opportunity districts that have a little bit longer distance. As we move away from the core of the city, it made sense to have a little more buffer between these and residential homes, and so I think that's why the consensus was around let that apply to the new opportunity districts.
But, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Sean, if somebody were to build a new sign in those current opportunity districts, they're not subject to that 500-foot setback?
That is correct.
Okay. I guess my comment on that is if it's good for some place, it should be good for every place. And I understand that's tough to do, but seems to be picking and choosing where the setback is.
And I guess that's comes to the point, there's really 2 different ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to?
My name is Pat Jackson with Skyline Digital Billboard Company here in Sioux Falls. And I just wanted to talk to you guys, this 500-foot spacing that we're all talking about. Mike Cooper, head of planning, his recommendation was 125-foot setback in the early on for these new districts. It got switched within the billboard committee meetings to 250. Shauna the city employee thought that was an unreasonable request as well. And at the recommendation of a few citizens, it was switched to 500 people. So I just want to point out the two city officials whose recommendations were 125 and then the 250 she believed was unreasonable. Their paid position recommendations were thrown out the door, and 500 is what was decided to go with by the committee. You talked about making that 500-foot rule, compliant to these opportunity districts. She'd had some numbers that if it was 250 foot, 40% of the current boards would be non-compliant. And if we did the 500-foot rule within the current boards, it would eliminate 90% of the boards. So in essence, if we do that 500-foot rule for these new opportunity districts going forward, if we expand the opportunity districts, it's basically going to make the billboards non-existent. I mean, it's going to be impossible to put them in because of the current boards, 95% of the boards being eliminated. I mean, there's not going to be any opportunity for future growth of these boards. And the gentleman from Lamar had stated 1,000 feet. That's great for Lamar. There's 195 some current boards in Sioux Falls. 175 of them are Lamar. So, the three other small companies, we have 20 boards combined. So forcing the little guy out, great for them, but I just wanted to point that out as well. So, any questions for me? I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? All right, no. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, I will look for commission action.
I think we might
Oh, I'm sorry. We have another gentleman. Please come forward.
John Stratman from 325 West La Quinta Circle. It was stated here earlier that this will be the template for future billboard placement. And while I and people in my neighborhood don't live in any of those opportunity zones, it's the future that Mr. Gould so adequately referred to. Where are we going to put these billboards in the future? And one of the particular issues that I have is the distinction between the distance from one billboard to another versus one billboard to my bedroom window. I don't know why it can't be consistent. If it's 600 feet from one billboard to another, why can't it be 600 feet from my bedroom window to a billboard? There's a lot of people that aren't here tonight because they're out working to pay property taxes so that they can continue to enjoy the use of that property. And they have an expectation, as do I, and I suspect everybody else that's going to be buying homes or building homes in the next 20 or 30 years, and that is that they will have unfettered use and the ability to enjoy their private property. And as it was stated earlier, put a billboard 40 feet in the air, they're not going to light that thing with a 60-watt bulb. Believe me, those lights are going to be coming in and shining in everybody's windows all around the area. And I would ask that you make the change and make it consistent, 600 feet from one billboard to another and 600 feet from private property to the billboard. I would ask that you give that due consideration because it's an important thing, not only for people that are out there now, but future development. It just is. And it goes to being able to enjoy your private property.
All right, thank you. Anyone else that would like to address this item? All right, seeing none, I will look for commission action.
I move for approval as presented.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Well, I'm going to bring up something that Nick just said, that if you do have a single family in that corridor and you existing, that you can put one up any place basically with no restrictions. The 600 feet between billboards does not affect the existing corridors, correct? It's just in the new proposed one.
That's already the requirement. The 600 feet between billboards is already the requirement in all of the existing opportunity districts once they get established this way.
Would be that also, okay. But like I said, I just don't feel it's, if they want to put up another billboard, they got 1,200 feet between two billboards and they put another one up and it affects the single family. In those corridors, I think that should be added to this, that in the existing corridor, that should be added.
Well, it's also important to keep in mind that even in these opportunity districts, they still have to be on a specific type of property. It can't go on, for example, if somebody has a piece of property that's residential and it fronts one of these opportunity districts, they can't put an off-premise sign in their yard. It has to be on commercial property and a few other specific types of uses. And so that starts to limit the spacing and the opportunities for additional signs. Then there's a distance between signs that's a limitation. And then there is a distance from adjacent properties that are already sensitive uses. I don't remember that specific number, Jeff, but we did, just to understand where the 500 came from, we researched, I think it was 6 or 8 other communities. I think Rochester, Minnesota ended up being one that was probably the most similar to what a lot of the discussion centered around. And I think they had, I think it was the 500 type range there as well. And so that's a lot of why I think as we were looking at future opportunity districts, we thought it made sense to require a little bit farther distance. But as the gentleman stated earlier, 500-foot distance right now on the existing opportunity districts would essentially outlaw billboards where they already stand. And that's not good policy either. And so we tried to balance through our discussions property owner rights, and obviously there's freedom of speech rights. There's all kinds of things that are related to billboards, and then property rights of the individuals that are either adjacent or nearby. And so there's always kind of a careful balance to make sure that these kinds of rules protect everybody as much as we can, but still allow things to happen, because changes happen, areas change, and there's always things to be considered that people want to do, and we have to respect that and try to come up with some legislation that makes as much sense as we can and things that are as reliable as they can be.
Thanks, Sean.
Madam Chair. Sean, you were on that committee. I know you guys, you met 5 times?
Yep, that's correct.
When you come up with your recommendation, was it unanimous? Did everybody kind of come to the same conclusion?
We did. We came to a final consensus. We took a lot of people's comments in consideration, and I think that's why it ended up being 500. I think for 2 of those meetings, we talked about it being 250 as being the distance from sensitive uses. I think there were probably half of our committee that were a little uncomfortable with that, and after more discussion and some of the community input that we had, I think everybody had a higher comfort level with making it 500 if it applied to the new opportunity districts. It causes other issues in these opportunity districts as shown. Does that answer your question, Kenny?
Okay. Madam Chair, and I think that's where I'm struggling with this one, because it seems to be 2 separate ordinances. If you're in the opportunity district, you have different rules than if you're outside of it or a potential new one.
And I think that's why these are called opportunity districts, because essentially each one of these 10 could have a different rule on it based upon the conditions of that district. And that, at least that was my understanding. So future opportunity districts can be different. It's a little more work for staff to keep track of which opportunity district this lands in or things like that. But
it seems a little more subjective then too, is it's okay one place but not okay another place. And I struggle with that.
And I think part of my thinking anyway was these are, if you drive down Minnesota where it's close to 22nd Street, that's an entirely different neighborhood than if I'm driving down 85th. And so opportunity districts, to a certain degree, want to kind of respect the type of and the quality of the neighborhood they're in too. And so just to apply a single measurement across all things and say this is where it should be everywhere may not be as receptive as it should be to the conditions of that neighborhood.
That can be a slippery slope too if we're going to say one neighborhood is better or more important or different than another one.
I don't think that was our intent.
Okay.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Yes.
Right, I believe we have, could you raise your hands one more time? All in favor signify by saying yes. So we have 5 yes. Opposed, same sign. And 3 no. Motion passes.
That was interesting.
Item 18, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the definitions of UT2 form sections of the 2013 Shape Places zoning ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls.
Now what everybody's been waiting for. Sorry, late in the mood. Okay, microcells. Everybody has a cell phone, but again, like everything else the planning office does, nobody wants to deal with it. So we all have to have cellular towers to deal with these things. And they have to be in the neighborhoods in order to have cellular service. Okay? So as technology has changed, we have to add new definitions to our zoning ordinance. We're trying to keep up as fast as we can. I've quickly changed this ordinance to address these new standards. We have microcells, which are small towers. This is what they generally look like in residential neighborhoods or in commercial neighborhoods. They look like light poles. You can see them there in front of Avera and in the residential neighborhood. Okay, they're 30, 35 feet tall. They're on a single pole. They have a little cell on the top. It's a microcell versus a telecommunications tower. All right, so the standards that we have listed in this new ordinance are, no one should be surprised that they have to be 600 feet apart because that's the standard in shape places. We made them all consistent. You have to be 600. In shape places, everything's 600 feet. 600 feet apart from all other towers, whether it's a microcell or a telecommunications or a broadcast, I don't care. It's 600 feet apart. There needs to be a 25-foot setback from the base of the tower to that existing structure or building setback. Again, we're dealing with that proposed fall-down distance. Then these microcells will probably be in the front yards of residential neighborhoods. Okay, when that happens, or if that happens, they shall be within 5 feet of the side yard lot line. So it's not immediately in your front yard. It's going to be off to the side a little bit, within 5 feet of that side yard lot line. And the design character, microcell designs, we've always used they shall be compatible. But they're not. So these, now I'm using materials, colors, texture, screenings, and landscape that is not in direct conflict with. I'm going complete, it's just, if it's in direct conflict, then they're not going to be used. And we did the same thing, we cleaned up the telecommunications towers. This is a cleanup of, they also have to be 600 feet apart, which is what it is now. Okay? And however, we've addressed, because you guys have dealt with these in the past, where we've always talked about the fall down distance of these telecommunications towers that are 150 feet tall, but Sharon and all these experts will tell me that they're not fall down towers. They don't ever fall down, folks. Nick, okay, they crumble. They're built to, they don't fall down. So they're never going to fall down 150 feet. So we changed the ordinance to address that issue on how these are engineered to work. So we've addressed that. It's a much better ordinance, and I think I have one one stakeholder that's still here that's interested in this, and he was here to answer any questions, but we're trying to make sure that we're addressing changing technology. So any questions for staff or applicant? First me.
For staff
or applicant, that's me.
All right, any questions? No. All right.
Okay, no.
Seeing none, look for commission action.
Now you got to.
Oh, I'm sure. Second time I've done that. Anybody in the audience who would like to address this item? Good thing I asked. Thank you for coming forward.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. I'll just be real brief. This is to improve data coverage. That's the benefit to citizens. The macro towers serve for the phone. This offloads the data coverage in areas of dense population or hard to reach areas, especially in areas like downtowns, the fairgrounds this week. And we're working with a wireless provider to improve that service in the community because almost everything we do, of the average of 2 hours a day we spend on our cell phones, only 10% of that is used for making phone calls. The rest is data coverage, so they have to improve the data network.
Really? 10%. That's interesting.
Think of your kids.
Give your kids.
So if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Well, a comment first. I'm glad to see that these microcells didn't need the big garden shed of equipment next to them. So they must
They're very sleek.
Must just connect to bigger arrays.
I'll give you just a little bit of background, Kurt. SDN Communications, my employer, is owned by the 17 independent telephone companies of South Dakota. Wireless technology would not work without SDN or them. All of these will have fiber optics that will backhaul the data back to the macro tower. But if I'm on my cell phone and I'm calling you, it goes from my phone to the nearest tower onto that landline fiber optic network that SDN and its owners have put into the ground across the region to the nearest tower to you and then wirelessly to you. So it's not truly an entirely wireless technology, and the fiber will go up these poles to that antenna.
And that would go to my second question. It probably just explained it. These really shouldn't or could not be integrated with existing street lights or any other utility poles that are already in existence because of, or maybe they can.
They can be, and we've talked about that. If I may show you one slide, Denise, if you can pull that up. They can be, and we have talked about that with planning and public works. The challenge is that the service level agreements that will have to be in place because the wireless providers consider these critical service today. There are so many devices going online, medical devices that are going to be speaking over the data network, but even more importantly, right now the state of South Dakota is in the process of getting the next generation of 911 services. In a matter of 18 months to 2 years, you will be able to text 911. That's a data service. So they consider these critical services, meaning that they have to have maintenance notices. And so if you put them on top of a light pole, and it does happen to get hit and come down, we would have 2 hours to put it up and get it back into service. And if we can't, we have to communicate with them every 2 hours, giving them status. More importantly, too, is that if Public Works needs to go and change the light bulb, the wireless provider needs 48 hours notice, and they prefer that it happens at midnight. So it becomes very challenging for Public Works to do that. The other thing is, right now, it's one provider that is talking about this technology. Very likely other providers will be talking about the same thing. On a light pole, there's only room for one provider because there has to be 5 feet distance so there's no interference between the two towers, the antennas. So it becomes very difficult to put them on light poles because of those conditions. Plus, because of the weight of the equipment, any light pole in existence, we would have to go in and redo the base of it anyway in order to support that weight.
All right, thank you. Just controlling that whole infrastructure.
Are you
Sounds
regretting
like
asking that now?
Well, I expected a highly thought out answer, so thank you.
I definitely feel
Slide
smarter.
to answer your question, so that's impressive. So,
someone asked it. Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to address this item? Seeing none, I need commission action.
Move to approve item 18, I think we're on.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
We are adjourned.